I am live. It says here, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our official second free webinar from the One Academy for this is going to be habits. Change your habits, reach your goals, and we're going to be talking about habits, how to make them, how to break them, and how they're going to affect your goals and how we're going to reach them. My name is Jose Alba, originally born and raised in the Dominican Republic. I've lived in the sunny Miami since 2008. Uh, Marketer and an aspiring world changer. And One Academy, or One, has been created by a group of entrepreneurs and mentors who understand that certain information needs to be available to people who are looking to better their lives and to have um, a better chance at reaching success. And we've decided that through certain media, free webinars, we want to make meetups, and we want to connect with people that want to be better, and connect them to mentors who can help them do that. And these webinars are part of that. Um, this is going to be, I don't know how long, to be honest. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, but I'm going to try to keep it as interesting as possible as well. Hopefully, you'll get some takeaways. But this is a very hands-on topic, and hopefully after the webinar I will be sending out some information and some worksheets for you to fill out and for you to work and stuff like that, and so that the stuff I say here today doesn't go um, without being practiced. Let's put it that way. But let's start talking about habits. And in reality, I want to say this. In reality, I think this webinar is about goal and how to achieve them. And we're looking at habits because possibly that's the maker or breaker for your goal setting. And when we look at what happens in a very particular day of the year, and I think we all know what the day is, 50% of the population, at least the US population, will be setting new goals. They'll be, they'll get excited. They feel like if they get a clean run at life, that they get a clean slate and begin to make different decisions for their life. And New Year's Eve, a lot of people make new decisions, and they decide to take on new goals. The problem with most people, and the problem that happens eventually when you realize that only about 8% of these people actually succeed past 6 months or something like that, it's a crazy number. What most people don't realize is that they set new goals, but they haven't put in practice new habits. They haven't even thought about the new habits that they would need to create in order to reach these goals. They haven't thought about the habits that they need to break in order to reach these goals. And what eventually happens is the excitement goes away, you go back into your regular life, and habits kick in. And you end up doing the same things you were doing December 15th. And so you get the same results you were getting December 15th. And this is a particular part of the year where where this happens, and it's very obvious. But it's what really happens on daily when people set new goals. People set new goals, but they find it very hard to to get there because they don't realize that habits need to change, and they're reliant basically on, I guess, willpower to make this happen. But let's talk about what they are and how they work. And habits have three characteristics. And I'm looking down. I have my notes here. I don't want to get lost in speech because I'd be speaking for hours if that happens. They have three characteristics. And number one is that we are only vaguely aware that we are performing habits. The way habits work is it's actions that are taken out of your conscious mind, and they're put into this little thing in your head that's called the basal ganglia. And what it does, it gives your conscious mind space to do whatever else it wants to do. And when you think about when you're driving to a place, probably work or probably back home or probably, I don't know, the supermarket, somewhere you go often, sometimes you get there and you think back and you can't even remember how you got there. That's because it's so automatic that it's happening out of your conscious brain. So it's just happening. Your brain has taken control, autopilot, and you're going. And this is great because it takes a lot of load off your conscious mind. But this also means that habits are performed automatically. So when we're trying to break or making, especially break habits, it becomes very complicated because we're barely aware that we're doing things habitually. Second characteristic is they're performed emotionless. Not that you're not feeling emotion while you're doing the habit, but the fact that the habit comes in has nothing to do or is not changed by your emotion, I guess. is what I'm trying to get at. Because they happen in the basal ganglia and it's just trigger, boom, go. You react automatically, which is one of the main characteristics of, and I was going to mention it, of habits is it's not about frequency. Sometimes people confuse habits about being frequent. It's about how automatic things are. And always a good example is if every time you go to the Cheesecake Factory, you have a cheesecake, that's a habit. You don't have to go every day for it to be a habit. You go every 2 months or every 3 months or once a year, but every time you go, you can't resist the urge because the moment you walk in there, it's a trigger. You have to have a cheesecake. Then that's a habit. And number three, the characteristic is that there's a context connection. Habits are triggered by context. We tend to do the same things under the same circumstances, and this is important to understand. Again, if we're going to be making or creating, breaking habits, especially if we're going to break habits. Uh, the main problem I think people have with habits is again the lack of knowledge and understanding how they really work and what it really is. And there's a lot of information out there about this, and it's a lot of studies through a long time, a long period of studying how they work and what they do. But what I want to do next is important. I want to look at some myths about habits and talk about them because you hear people say this, you hear people say that, and you fall into the trap of thinking that this is how it works. So number one, I already mentioned it. Habits are not based on how frequent you do things; they're based on how automatic things are. So if something happens, your brain automatically clicks. Your basal ganglia goes into action, and it's like you're a zombie and you're just acting. Number two is a very important one. It's because it's believed by a lot of people, and it's said and repeated sometimes on stages, sometimes on webinars, sometimes in books. It's a 21-day myth. It takes 21 days to make a habit. This is absolutely 100% not true. Actually, 21 days is at the lower end of habit creation. You can create a habit in 21 days, but it doesn't mean that all habits are created in 21 days straight of doing something. It's going to depend on the habit, and it's going to depend on the person. It's going to depend on how hard the habit is, how frequent the habit is. It's going to depend on what level of willpower the person has to get going. It's going to depend on a lot of things, but understand that it could take up to a year to create a habit. I think the number was when they did the studies was between 21 days and 284 or something like that, depending on the habit and again depending on the person. So don't believe the 21-day myth. Don't go in and I hope this doesn't discourage you from trying to create a new habit, because one of the next ones in the myths about habits is the following: the myth about you can't miss a day. This is absolutely and 100% again not true. And I think this is something people use as a way of bailing out from having to do the hard parts. I missed a day, I'll just, whatever, I just missed it, drop out and continue doing whatever you were doing before. Understand that if you miss a day, continue the next day, because you'll keep retraining your mind and retraining this habit loop into understanding that this is the new habit you want to insert in there. All right, so missing a day is not really going to make you or break you, unless you decide to derail because you did. Another myth about habits, it's a willpower myth. Most people think that people that achieve greatness and that go, for example, to go to the gym every day and they wake up at 4 in the morning and they do this and it's all based on willpower. And the reality is, willpower is important, yes, but it's important to get you started. Once you create the habit, these people are, again, acting out of habit. They've just created the correct and proper habits. Some of us have developed habits to snooze every morning, and some of us have developed habits to get up and go to the gym every morning. It really depends on what habit you've created. If someone doesn't have more willpower than the other when it's happening, it's just the decision they made and the fact that they were able to generate and create a habit. Okay? And finally, it's that habits is not all about reward. Reward is going to be important in the creation of new habits, yes. But when we're going to look at breaking habits, we're going to have to look at some other pieces within the habit loop. And if you're not familiar with the habit loop, it's something that this guy, Charles Duhigg, from this book, The Power of Habit, made, excuse me one second, made very famous. He talks about the habit loop and how it works and how we, especially how we can, I don't want to say the word break habits, the way we can manage habits in order to change them. And what he says is that the habit loop is made out of 3 parts. It's going to be the cue or the trigger, which could be different things, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Then you got the actual habit, the action that happens. And finally, you get the reward, whatever it is that you were looking to get through that action. Okay, so he sets examples like, at 3 o'clock, some people get the urge to have a cookie in the office, and every day at 3 o'clock, it's like you get this desire to have this cookie. They get up, they walk, they have the cookie. Eventually, what they find out is, and what he talks about the example is, this person wasn't actually craving a cookie. They were craving talking to people and just getting off their seat. And what he says is, well, if you want to break that habit with a good habit, well, whenever you feel that craving, just go for water instead. When you get up, go for a water fountain. You're gonna find people on your way there. You're gonna have a chat, and you're gonna get back to your desk, and you're gonna have that 5-minute break sensation that you needed anyway, but you didn't have the cookie. All right. Give me 1 second, guys. So once we understand this habit loop, cue, habit, reward, we can start managing habits in a way where we can control, as long as we start understanding the cues. And this is where breaking habits is important, because you got to realize when you go into this automatic. Because if you don't get the cue, then you're gone. Because once the cue hits, again, remember, your conscious brain is gone. You have no idea what's going on, in the sense of that what you're doing with the action, because it's so habitual. All right. So this is the first part of changing a habit, and we're going to talk about why the reward is important in a second. I want to tell you a story. I'm trying to find it here, because again, I don't want to ramble on for days. But let's talk about what these cues can be and these triggers can be, because if we're going to try to find them, we got to figure out what they are and what they can be. And they can be one of 5 things. All right. It could be a time of day. We just mentioned an example where it's a time of day. 3 o'clock, I get this urge to get up and walk to the kitchen and get a cookie. It could be a location. Every time I'm at a certain place, like Cheesecake Factory, I feel the urge of having cheesecake. All right. A preceding event. Every time, basketball game comes on, I feel the urge to have a beer. Happens to me all the time. Emotional state. Every time I feel sad, every time I feel angry, I have ice cream. So, emotional state. And finally, and this one is rough, but it's other people. And I can think about a few friends when I get together, and whenever they're in the house, I feel the urge of doing certain things, like drinking or barbecuing or whatever it is we do, or eating not the right food. So other people, emotional state, preceding event, location, and time of day. So it's important to recognize that it can be one of these 5 things where we're going to start recognizing what triggers our bad habits that we now want to change to achieve our goals. All right. So one of the most important things to understand when we look at these 5 things is that the easiest way to change a habit is to change environment. Although that's not easy, but it's been proven and it's been studied and it's been proven again, that, for example, companies that understand how to market well and have departments that work for this understand that the best moment to introduce a new brand of whatever to a person is after what they call inflection points in their life. Either they moved, or they got married, or they had a kid, or graduated and went to college, or whatever. These big events where people are now changing their environment so their habits are more vulnerable to being changed, because now those triggers are out of place. So when you start thinking about this, obviously, you're not gonna go New Year's resolution. I want to change my life. Let me move, because who's gonna do that? But there are certain things within your normal environment that you can start changing. And one of the easiest and hardest one, I guess, is the people you hang out with. It's easy because you can decide to hang out with different people, but it's hard because you're gonna have to cut some ties. And again, I know this sounds harsh, but if we're talking about goal setting or goal achieving, and you've got a goal in mind that's big enough and important enough for you, you're going to make these sacrifices, and you're going to have to. And when you look at people who have achieved great things, you have a conversation with them, and I'm talking from anyone to the Mark Zuckerbergs to the small business owner who lives a successful life. They had to cut ties at some point. They had to make different decisions at some point, because they understood, or not, or they didn't understand what they were doing at the moment, but that helped them change their habits, which in turn helped them reach their goals. So Changing your environment is one of the most important things you can do for breaking habits. Again, one of the easiest things you can do is start hanging out with different people. Um, I would change my route to work. I would stop going to certain places. I would um, prepare an if-then plan. Here's a a change of mobile environment per se. Um, I found myself in a situation where it was very easy for my thumb to open up my phone and click Facebook app and just start scrolling. It was incredible. Like, again, habitual. You don't realize it. And halfway, 30 minutes in, you realize, I'm like, why am I scrolling down to Facebook? What am I looking for? And you've lost 30 minutes of your life. And I know some people here probably been through that. And what I decided to do was delete the Facebook app for a while. Like, I deleted it, so my thumb couldn't find it. So when whatever craving I got triggered the desire to go to the Facebook app, my finger would my body would go in a habit mode. My finger would grab my phone, unlock it, but the habit was broken the moment I couldn't find the Facebook app. That was a per se change of environment. If you kind of understand where I'm going with this, because I don't know what habits you're trying to break. But if you can figure out what they are and you can figure out what the cues are, maybe you can make small changes around that to help you out. Because if you can eliminate the triggers, you can break that habit, right? Without having to move out of your house, for example. Another way in which we change habits or break habits, and this is going to sound a little weird, and it's going to sound, I guess, hard, because this in itself is developing a new habit. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well. But this book said this was one of the things I want to emphasize is not everything that I'm going to say is going to work for everybody. It's very important. Not everything I'm going to say is going to work for everybody. I'm going to talk further on about how you deal with this. But this book talked about mindfulness and being mindful and practicing meditation. And again, you don't have to be a meditation master. You don't have to meditate for an hour and a half, and you don't have to make weird noises, and you don't have to be, in the top of the Himalayas. What he talks about is simply taking a minute to be conscious of the present moment. And I remember trying this for a while as I was trying to get into meditation. And there's again many strategies, and you can read about them online, and you can find what works for you. What worked for me was sitting outside or sitting inside, whatever was available at the moment, closing my eyes and listening to what was going on around me, and trying to picture in my head how things looked and what was going on. So, if I sat outside and I heard a car rolling by, I was trying to picture what car was, and as I saw it pass the road, if I heard a tree move, maybe a bird. But it brings you into the present moment. And what he says is, and I was like, how is this connected to habits at all? What he says is you're practicing being in the present moment, being aware of what's going on. And eventually this starts to trickle into your life, and you can brush your teeth with better awareness, and you can watch TV with much more awareness, and you can sit down and have your dinner, your breakfast with more awareness. And this allows you to find cues a lot better, and to realize when your habits are triggered and what habits you're developing throughout the day. Because sometimes, again, we go throughout the day without knowing. 50 to 70% of our day is controlled by habits. That's why they're so important to the achievement of your goals, because you can't pretend to achieve your goals and you have 30% that's left. It's not going to happen. You need to direct your habits towards your goals, or it's not going to happen. But meditation and the practice of meditation, serving as a keystone habit, and we're going to talk about what keystone habits are in a second, allows you to be aware of yourself. When you hit your cues, when you go into habit mode, and what you're looking for, which allows you in turn to identify, well, this habit is happening this time, I want to change this for this. So the practice of mindfulness might be a difficult route, but it might be the route that works for you. Again, I'm putting out there a few different things, because not everything works for everyone when it comes to making or breaking habits. The willpower myth, and we're going to talk about this because I mentioned at the beginning, is important, because a lot of people, what they do is they recognize the cue, and then they try to suppress the habit. They try to hold back, and they'll just sit still, and they'll fidget, and they'll try not to do whatever they thought they were going to do. I'm not going to eat the cookie. 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 And what this ends up building, again, research is demonstrated over and over again is that this creates a binging effect eventually. What happens is you you don't want the cookie, but what is it you're saying when you say I'm not going to eat the cookie, I don't want the cookie? Willpower runs out, you won't have one cookie, you'll have 11, because you're relying on willpower, and willpower is not a skill that you have, it is a muscle that you develop, and that gets tired just like any other muscle. If you go to the gym, it doesn't matter how strong your biceps are, you're going to do curls, and eventually you won't be able to lift 5 pounds because your muscle got tired. And your willpower is just equally the same. You're gonna make decisions throughout the day. You're gonna use your willpower to make better decisions throughout the day. And especially if you're trying to suppress a habit, you're gonna use up a lot of that. And eventually, what's gonna happen is you're gonna run out, and you're gonna go straight for whatever it is you were trying to avoid. This book put it as an analogy of a river. If you want to change the course of a river, you can't just dam it up, because eventually what's happening, the water will build up and it will overflow. You got to slowly start carving a new path for it. So what you do is, instead of trying to suppress, you create an if-then plan. You try to change the habit. Again, I'm going to talk about my Facebook addiction habit, or whatever you want to call it. Eventually, Facebook app was back on. Eventually, habit creeps back in. And so what I tried this time was, I said to myself, urge to do this. I'm going to probably open the app, but I'm going to try to catch myself. And every time I catch myself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my phone. I'm going to read 2 pages of my book. 2 pages of my book. 2 pages. I'll tell you, I read a lot that year. Because every time I pulled my phone out and pressed the Facebook app, and I was able to catch me. Sometimes it took me 10 minutes to catch myself doing it. 10 minutes in of scrolling down is when I caught myself doing it. And I would pull out my book and read pages, because I was retraining my brain to understand that cue meant book. Entertainment, read a book. Don't go to Facebook. Don't scroll to Facebook endlessly, because it doesn't bring any good to you. It doesn't help your goal. What helped my goal? Reading other books. All right. Self-affirmation. I had a story. It says read story for the book, but apparently somebody, pretty sure my 2-year-old, got to my book and pulled out my bookmark. But I'm going to tell you what it basically said. It was this research made where people were put in a situation where their willpower was put to the test. There was a control group, and there was another one. And basically what they realized is that a group that was forced to write about self-affirmations ended up, I think I remember, they were forced to write a whatever page of writing without using the letters N or the letter A, which means you're going to use a lot of willpower, because it's going to take a lot of mental strength to avoid these letters. And then what they did was they grabbed that group and a control group, and they made them put their hands into 2 ice water buckets that after a while starts hurting. So the group that had done the exercise first about writing was only able to hold for like 25 seconds, while the other group that had done no activity before that was able to hold for like 85 seconds. What they did after that was they had the same sort of experiment, but they had people write these things without NAs, but it was self-affirmations. And eventually what happened was that these people now were able to hold from 21 seconds after writing about self-affirmations. It went to 61 seconds. So what self-affirmations did eventually was elevate your level of willpower, give your willpower an extra pump, allowing you to hold on a little longer. Because in the creation of new habits, yes, you're going to need willpower. Yes, sometimes at the beginning you're going to have to push yourself, and you're going to have to use your willpower to divert that attention from the old habit to the new habit, like I did with the Facebook thing. It's going to require willpower, because trust me, every time I was on Facebook, and I'm reading there, and I'll catch myself on my door. Okay, you caught yourself, you got to read that book. There was a battle in my head every time. Yeah, but you can do that later, or just stay on Facebook, whatever. What's one time? You're going to need that willpower, and you're going to have to develop it. And we're going to talk about how you develop that as well. And we're going to talk about that now. We're going to go into the importance of keystone habits and small wins. And I've been talking for 24 minutes, so I'm fine. Keystone habits and small wins. Keystone habits are incredibly important, because one of the mistakes people make in New Year's resolutions, and sometimes with setting goals as well on a normal day, but New Year's resolutions especially, is they want to change their life completely, 100%, 180-degree turn. it's like, I want to do this, and 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 I want to do this. So it's like 5 goals at the same time, which require developing 5 new habits, breaking 6 old habits, and you are just not going to have the mental power to do that. So you will break down. The importance of keystone habits is that these habits dislodge and remake other patterns, allowing you to break more habits simultaneously. So it's kind of a domino effect. You hit this one, and if you change this one, you're going to change a few other ones without the same necessary energy. You're leveraging the power of this habit to change all these. And there's a good example that this book talks about when back in 1987, Paul O'Neill became the CEO of the Aluminum Company of America, or Alcoa, it was the short. And in 1987, this company, by the way, made like Hershey's wrappers and Coca-Cola cans and all this stuff. So it was a big business, a lot of shareholders. But just before 1987, they had made some wrong decisions. The company wasn't doing as well, and so they brought Paul O'Neill to change things around. And in his presentation speech, he goes on and he talks about something that just blows everybody's mind, not in a good way. And a lot of shareholders were not very happy because he stood there and he talked about employee safety. This was the one thing he was going to nail down on. And again, we're talking about a company that deals with aluminum, metal at I don't know what heat or what temperature. So very hot metal. So injuries happened a lot, which meant people missed work a lot. Which, okay, I can see how that it could increase productivity. But he stood there and talked just about employee safety. He didn't talk about numbers. He didn't talk about projections. He didn't talk about profits. He didn't talk about any of that. He said he was going to make Alcoa one of the safest companies in the world. And that's all he talked about. And some of the guys out there left saying, you know what, I'm going to take my, sell my shares, do this, do that. This is gone crazy, whatever. Eventually what happened, a year later, the company had hit record high profits. And by the year 2000, the market capitalization was raised by $27 billion by Paul O'Neill. The year 2000, he retired. So from 1987 to 2000, he raised the market capitalization of Alcoa by $27 billion. And obviously in a year, reached record high profits. And obviously all the guys that sold their shares were, beating their heads against the wall. But what Paul O'Neill had realized is very simple. He had hit a keystone habit, and he knew that if he hit this one thing, it would start to trickle into other things within the company, elevating productivity to a point where it would reflect on the profits. And organizations can do that, and we as people can do that as well. And it's been proven that some habits can be keystone habits, and they reflect, through research, they reflect in other parts of your life. And I'm going to mention a few ones here. Number 1, making your bed. Making your bed is 2 things. The keystone habit is a small win because it's something that requires not a lot, that doesn't require a lot of willpower. That's easy to do, it's fast, but will build and fuel your willpower. But making your bed. Bed makers are also more likely to like their jobs, own a home, exercise regularly, and feel well rested. This is research proven. Bed makers are more likely to like their jobs, own a home, exercise regularly, and feel rested. Just by making your bed in the morning. Keystone habit, domino effect. Exercise. I'm pretty sure this is the one most people have heard of, is a keystone habit. People who exercise have increased patience, less stress, and are more productive at work. Have more confidence or display more confidence and have better sleep. Also make better decisions about their food intake. Family dinners. Families who habitually eat dinner together seem to raise children with better homework skills, higher grades, greater emotional control, and more confidence. Family dinners. Family dinners. How hard is that? Food journaling. Different from calorie counting. Food journaling is keeping a journal of what you eat. And the reason this is important is because you start realizing when you start realizing cues, you start realizing when you want a snack. And so you can prep better for that snack. And instead of having a bunch of cookies or Cheeto Puffs or whatever it is you're having, you can be ready and you have a healthier snack ready for when you feel that craving. Meditating, as we've spoken before. Furthermore, meditation is correlated with increased memory and awareness, reduces stress, anxiety, and increases goal setting. And the last one I looked up was willpower. Considered willpower a keystone habit. And obviously, I don't think it's a keystone habit, but it's something that is going to correlate into your creation of any other habit. And if you can develop your willpower through small wins here and there, by tackling one habit at a time, Your willpower, again, like your muscles, will grow and will be stronger, allowing you to create harder habits in a shorter time. um, 30 minutes. All right, cool. I said 40 minutes. So let's talk about something very important. And we're going to talk about now habits of high achievers and high performers. Um, but here's the gist of what I've just spoken about, and we're going to go over it in a second. But what I want you to understand with this webinar is that the first thing you need in order to change habits or make new habits is clarity on your goals. And that's the one main thing people are missing, is clarity on their goals. People are very clear on what they don't want, but that's very vague. If I say, you want to go out to dinner, what would you like to eat? And you tell me, well, I don't want to have chicken. Okay, that's great, but it doesn't tell me what you want to have. So this is how most people live their lives. Like, I don't want to be making this kind of money next year. I don't want to be driving this car next year. I don't want to be living in this neighborhood next year. I don't want to be doing this, and I don't want to be doing that. And I don't want to have this, and I don't want to have that. People are not very clear about what they have, what they want. They don't say, you know what, I want to have a filet mignon with broccoli on the side and some mashed potatoes from this and this place. That's how you set goals. That's how you really create clarity and allow yourself to have a better and easier time at creating and breaking habits, is when you create that clarity of this is what I want. And one of the worksheets I'm going to send out after the webinar is done, probably today or tomorrow, you'll be receiving it, is a clarity sheet where you are going to be asked, or you're going to be tasked with clarifying what it is you want 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. Clear vision, detail by detail, because the clearer this is, the easier it's going to be for you to create and make these new habits. Because we need to first understand where it is you want to go. We need to understand what direction you're heading in order to start walking. So clarity is the most important part of creating and breaking habits. Habits, we're only talking about habits because we want to reach our goals. If we didn't want to reach your goals, then there's no point of talking about habits. Keep living your happy life, keep doing what you're doing, and go on with what you were doing before. There's no reason for this webinar. There's no reason to learn to manage your habits and learn to change them and learn to break them. All right. But it's important to understand that. Number 2, I want to talk about other people as well. About the number 5 trigger, other people. Because one of the things that research showed was for a person to change a habit and for it to stay changed, one of the most important things he needs is to believe that the habit can stay changed. And one of the only things that can provide that belief is other people. Is when you surround yourself with other people that have changed these habits. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous has become such a successful organization. And it's very hard to put their success into numbers because a lot of people are anonymously there, obviously, but millions of people have attributed sobriety to Alcoholics Anonymous and the system and how it works. And it's because, one, I'm not going to talk about all the reasons why it works, but one, it puts you around people that had the habit you had, and they know being an alcoholic goes beyond being a habit, but the way the AA meetings manage it is through what Charles explains in the Power of Habit book. But it puts you around people that have been through the process and give you the belief system that if he was an alcoholic and he was able to break that habit, then I can do it too. Because from where you stand, it doesn't look possible. But if you see someone and you're surrounded by people that say, well, I was there and now I'm here, that gives you that extra belief that gives you the ability to permanently change a habit. Again, this is research. This is why hanging out with specific people is so important. You got to protect your relationships. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Let's go into habits of successful people. And you can find articles upon articles about this online. And you're going to find articles that talk about, the habits of Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Anthony Robbins and Richard Branson and all these guys. And these are great. And not everybody's going to have the same habits, obviously, but there's some that we can pinpoint as being important for achieving success. But I want to take habits from a study done by Thomas Corley, and he wrote a book about it. I recommend that you get it. It's fantastic. But what Thomas Corley did was for 5 years, he studied people that make over $160,000 a year and had $3.2 million or more in assets. And he studied another group that makes $60,000 or less and had less than $5,000 in assets. So he called them the wealthy and the non-wealthy. All right? 5 years studying people that made $160,000 a year or more and had $3.2 million or more in assets, and a group of people that make $60,000 or less and $5,000 or less in assets. And he studied what their habits were for 5 years. And here's what he discovered. One of the main habits of the wealthy was reading. And I'm pretty sure you've heard this before. But it's very shocking when you look at the numbers and when you realize what's really going on. He says among the wealthy, 88% read 30 minutes or more every day. 30 minutes or more every day. 63% of them are listening to audiobooks on their commute. What are you listening to on your commute? 79% of them are reading educational, career-related material. 55% are reading for personal development. 58% are reading biographies of successful people. 94% are reading about current events. And when I talk about current events, I'm not talking about, somebody got shot in the corner over there, whatever it is. I'm talking about technological advances, what's happening in the market, financially, stuff like that. 51% are reading about history. And only 11% are reading for pure entertainment. He goes on to say the reason successful people read is to improve themselves, to separate themselves from the competition. They increase their knowledge and they are able to see more opportunities because of this. Comparatively speaking, only 1 in 50 of those in the non-wealthy group engage in this daily self-improvement reading routine. So 1 in 50. So we went from 88 to 2%. 88% to 2%. I think it's very noticeable that the wealthy people read. Next one, network and volunteer regularly. And Thomas Corley goes over a bunch of different habits. I'm going to go over the ones I thought were more important and that we could talk about here. But I recommend that you look this up. There's an article actually that talks about all that. Just look up Thomas Corley, research, whatever. You'll find it. Network and volunteer regularly. He says you'll build valuable relationships that can result in more customers or clients or help you land a better job if you spend time with other people and giving back to your community. Here's the important thing. Almost 3/4 of wealthy people network and volunteer a minimum of 5 hours a month. Among those struggling financially, only 1 in 10 does. So this is important. Again, if you want to change your environment and want to change the people you're hanging out with, and again, I know this sounds harsh. I'm not saying this because your friends suck. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you want to put yourself around the right people because that's going to allow you to change your habits. It's going to allow you to do a lot of different things. But you don't find a way to meet these new people. Volunteering and networking events is going to put you around a lot of wealthy people because 3/4 of them spend 5 hours a month at least out there. So there's where you're going to find them. That's one place. Avoid toxic people. We are only as successful as the people we spend the most time with, Thomas Corley says. Of wealthy, successful people, 86% associate themselves with other successful people. But 96% of those struggling financially stick with those that are struggling financially. This is huge. And again, I'm not trying to say you got to change your friends. I'm just trying to say you're going to have to cut some ties. And, well, I'm not saying you're going to have to. You're going to decide to if you want to reach your goals. Because this one is going to be the biggest environment change you can do. Because your peer group affects you so much in so many different ways that if you don't make this decision, trust me, you are not going to move forward. Get a mentor. And this goes back to when I said at the beginning, not everything works for everyone. One thing you need is a mentor. A mentor who can guide you through the process of finding what works for you. A person that has been where you want to be. A person that has walked the trail you want to walk now. He says among the wealthy, 93% of the people who had a mentor attributed their success to that person. Again, the importance of clarity. If you know your goals, find someone who has already achieved them or achieved something similar. But you need to know what your goals are in order to find the right mentor, to find the right person to drive you down the right path. It's very important that you clarify what it is you want. And the other thing he says is you'll be amazed how many of these people are willing to lend a helping hand. Just reach out. You'll find somebody. And that's one of the things we want to provide through the One program is mentorship for people trying to achieve their goals. So we're going to talk about that more later on. Keeping your goals in sight. I focus on my goals every day. Rich people or wealthy people agreed 62% of the time. Not so wealthy people agreed 6% of the time. and they know what needs to be done today. They keep a daily to-do list. Wealthy 81%, not wealthy 19%. So it's very obvious that there's some habits that we would like to emulate that Thomas Gordon speaks about if we want to reach certain goals. But again, this is very vague, and it's only an idea of what habits look like for those who achieve at a higher level. But again, it is very important that you go back and you sit down and you think about what it is you want to achieve, and you clarify all these things that you want to achieve so that you can develop the right habits to help you get there. Because if until you do, it's like GPS again. Until you don't decide where you want to go, you can't put the GPS. It can't tell you where to go or how to get there. You need to clarify that, and that's again one of the worksheets I'm going to send out in order to start making and breaking your habits. Big thing, final thing, because this is what One Academy and the One Group is all about, is accountability. We want to create a community of people who want to develop themselves and want to be better. Um, and so what that allows you to have is a group of accountability when you're creating new habits, and that's one thing that helps a lot when you are accountable to somebody else. Because when you're accountable to yourself, you have these conversations in your head. It's very easy to convince yourself of not doing something. But once you start involving other people and you put your honor and you put your word towards somebody else, and it creates kind of a friendly competition as well, you're able to tap into this group synergy and this group force and this group willpower that is only available through sharing these goal setting, habit setting things with other people. So that's a community we're looking to create, and we're looking to create it again through webinars. We want to have an online community, but we also want to have local communities all throughout the East Coast, from Miami to Canada or whatever it is, in the Caribbean, where we have people, where we know we're reaching people. And we want to create different communities that locally get together and do different things and help each other develop, and help each other build new habits. So I'm looking to develop a couple new habits and then fortify a few ones that have been weakened. It's a very hard. We recently went through an inflection point in our life. We had a baby 3 months ago, so things change. I have to restructure, and again, I'm looking for that accountability. I'm looking for a group of people to push me to be better, and I hope you're looking for that too. And we hope to see you in the next webinar. We will have the same webinar tomorrow in Spanish, in case you know somebody who wants to see it, and we will be announcing the next webinar pretty soon. We'll be sending out a survey. The reason we did the habit loop was because we sent out a survey and people wanted to learn about habits. I hope you learned something. Please, for those who registered, you received an email. If you have any questions, if you want anything, you want to know anything, please reach out through that email. And we'll be seeing you guys soon. I hope you all have a fan. Checking out, if I can find out how.